Hello everybody and welcome to Every Movie Ever. I'm Eric and this is of course the show where we are reviewing every movie ever made, starting today with, improbably, Valet Girls. Yes, when we say we're going to review every movie ever made, we mean every movie ever made, including this 80s exploitation. Well, I'm not going to say classic. I mean, this is certainly a movie I have seen around. It's one I remember being on the video store shelves, and it is one that I always ignored. But I don't know if I would say recently, but within the last couple of years, I've been watching a little more exploitation fare, looking for the diamonds in the rough. One, I don't know if it's quite a diamond, but certainly one of the cubic zirconia in the rough that I found over on my show Bad Movie Brothers with my brother Chad is My Chauffeur, which is a movie about a young woman who becomes a chauffeur. Deborah Foreman of Valley Girl fame, incidentally. And so, you know, it's not a big jump from chauffeur to valet and to Valet Girls. Now, here's the thing about this movie. The actresses in it are certainly charming, but really nothing happens in this movie. The plot seems like it's going to be set up about like a bunch of rival valet outfits trying to outdo each other. That doesn't really pan out. Most of this movie happens at a party that the girls are working at and then partying at. It's really an inconsequential, nothing there movie that had a couple of enjoyable-ish moments, but never went anywhere. So you can only give Valet Girls 2 stars. Over on the Netflix recently, we caught a new comedy film called Fun Mom Dinner. There have been a ton of terrific female-centric comedies lately, including some female-centric comedies about moms, specifically Bad Moms, which I liked quite a bit. And so Fun Mom Dinner did not seem like it was too far afield from that kind of thing. Plus, terrific pedigree. In the cast, you've got Katie Aselton, who was so great on The League. You've got Toni Collette, the Australian actress who is so great in really everything she's in. The hilarious stand-up Bridget Everett is in this picture. She doesn't do a lot of movies, so it was fun to see her here. And then Molly Shannon, the Saturday Night Live great, and more recently of the terrific Cord and Tish specials, all starring in this picture. It's also really admirable that it stays female behind the camera, directed by Althea Jones, and then written by Julie Rudd, who I will point out is related to Paul Rudd. And, so it's a movie that you go into with high hopes, and while it does have funny moments, it's just fine. It just doesn't really do it. All of the women in this are terrific. There's a fine turn from comedic actor Paul Rust in this, and, the movie gets bogged down, I think, with the romance subplot for Katie Aselton's character. Ultimately, the movie is at best fine. I mean, it debuted on the Netflix, and it's it has that sort of direct-to-video vibe about it, where it's only ever going to be so good. I had hoped for more from everybody involved, and I continue to hope for more. It's certainly not that these people aren't talented, and I hope that we can see more work from all of them that is, that brings it up a notch. But for the moment, Fun Mom Dinner, 2.5 stars. Now it is time for Calling All Horror Hounds. Finally, in my travels now amongst the movies, I am getting back to watching a number of 80s horror classics or pseudo-classics that I, for whatever reason, always missed out on. Finally got around to watching Waxwork, the horror movie set at a wax museum. Terrific cast in this one. I'll get to the cast in a moment, though. So the plot, such as it is, group of teens go into a wax museum. One by one, they are, hypnotized or magicked into the scenarios depicted in the Wax Museum. And so what you end up with is sort of an episodic or anthology style horror movie where within the larger horror movie there are all these smaller horror movies that are the things that our main characters, the teens, experience within the Wax Museum. And I really liked most of those scenes. Particularly the vampire sequence is a ton of fun. There's also a pretty good werewolf sequence, a good zombie sequence, a mummy sequence that, listen, we all know on this show I love mummies. The mummy sequence is, if I'm being honest, a little bit lackluster. But it's rare that you go into a movie that is having as much fun as this movie is having and to get as much, variety as this one has. Because all of these sequences are so relatively short, they never really get bogged down, never outstay their welcome. This was a treat of a movie for me. I mentioned the cast earlier. Anchoring this thing, you have Zach Galligan of Gremlins fame. Don't see him in a lot of movies, so it was fun to see him here and to see him at his prime. Still doing solid work as sort of the our straight man hero within the context of this horror movie. Deborah Foreman, who I mentioned in an earlier review, probably best known for Valley Girl, is another one of the teens. She's terrific. You also have a couple of all-timers in this. You've got David Warner, who is a character actor, an English character actor that I just adore, whether it's from his work in Star Trek or in movies like The Omen, or his copious voiceover work, particularly as Brain Guy on Freakazoid. Always terrific to see David Warner in a picture. We also have in this one Patrick McNee, who played Steed on The Avengers in sort of the Van Helsing role. So this movie really has a lot going for it. It's firing on all cylinders. It tends to hew more toward the silly side of horror than the terrifying side of horror, but that's just fine with me. I liked Waxwork a lot, and I am giving it 4 stars. I enjoyed Waxwork so much that I decided I needed to stick around and check out Waxwork 2, Lost in Time. The plot of this one is similar, except now time travel is involved, although arguably time travel was involved in the first one. So that's, I don't know, that's a little bit confusing. Zach Galligan, not Galifianakis, that's a different Zach G. Zach Galligan is back, but Deborah Foreman isn't. And the lady that they replaced Deborah Foreman with in the same role, because this is a real direct sequel, is no Deborah Foreman. Similarly, Zach Galligan seems to be playing a little bit of a different character. Part of Zach Galligan's charm in Waxwork was that he was playing a pretty big jerk. Here he is toned down to just regular horror hero levels. I would say that Waxwork 2 does not work as well. There is a real weird Marquis de Sade sequence that hasn't aged particularly well that involves our heroine as soon as she's hanging around the Marquis de Sade just being cool with it. There's an Aliens knockoff sequence that, they don't have the budget here to do Aliens justice, and so what they're able to do doesn't quite sell. But there is still a fairly high level of fun to be had here, particularly in the House on Haunted Hill sequence that teams Zach up with the one and only Bruce Campbell of Evil Dead fame. So it's terrific to see Bruce Campbell here. It's terrific to see Bruce playing it somewhat straight and in a real haunted house vibe, which is a thing we haven't seen. Now, does his chest still get flayed open and silly things still happen to him? Absolutely. This is still a reasonably silly horror movie, arguably sillier than the first Waxwork. Like I said, it's not as strong as that earliest picture, but it is worth a watch. Waxwork 2, 3 stars. Let's head over to MST3 A to Z. Now this is, of course, longtime viewers fully aware, and to those longtime viewers, I'm wasting your time right here. But for the rest of you, MST3 A to Z, this is the part of the show where we are watching every Mystery Science Theater 3000 movie in alphabetical order from A to Z, because I I'm an enormous nerd, and today we are looking at City Limits, I guess, post-apocalyptic tale of some teens who are fighting some other teens, but the other teens are involved in some sort of corporate interest or something. Look, this movie is boring. This movie is confusing. I would have a very difficult time telling you what is going on in this movie, except that the characters are very interested in each other's comic book collections. James Earl Jones, unfortunately, appears in this. This is also some real low-level, bottom-of-the-barrel work from Kim Cattrall. And the guy from Christine, not that guy, that guy. This is a garbage movie, half a star. Let's set phasers to stun and get spaced out. Today on Spaced Out, our science fiction section, we're looking at Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets. This was a movie that as soon as it was announced and the first trailers came out, you went, well, that looks pretty, but I bet it's going to be real bad. It was directed by Luc Besson. Now, Luc Besson is a director, I don't know if I want to say he's a good director. He's a director, certainly. And he's made a lot of movies that are good-ish. He lives in the space between 2.5 and 3.5 stars. He's made probably his best-known movie and best movie is Leon the Professional. He also did The Fifth Element, and he's a producer for movies like Taken and the Transporter series. So these movies that are very much in the modern exploitation studio, weird and maybe not super good kind of movies. Unfortunately, since this movie came out and since I saw it, Luc Besson has turned out to maybe be a pretty creepy dude, which honestly shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. And certainly in watching Valerian and thinking about some of his other movies, Luc Besson is a director with a real woman problem. He doesn't treat his female characters particularly well. They are usually plot devices or MacGuffins to motivate the hero. In Valerian in particular, those woman problems really seem to come to the fore as the movie follows Valerian and his female sidekick and really gives short shrift to the female sidekick, making her entire storyline be that she loves Valerian. And it just feels not great, especially because there are moments in the movie where she, like Mia Jovovich in The Fifth Element, is a pretty kick-ass character, but she's always being held back by the script, which is a shame. She's played by Cara Delevingne, I want to say her name is. She played the sorceress in Suicide Squad. Now, she was atrocious in that movie, but I don't know that that was really her fault, because watching her here, she's pretty charming, but like I say, the script really holds her back. Additionally, in the cast you have Dane DeHaan playing Valerian, and he could not be more of a yawn as an actor. And so it's a shame to have a movie like this anchored by such a boring presence. Ultimately, it's a movie that is pretty gorgeous to look at, but is ultimately at best hollow and at worst outright frustrating. Valerian, 2.5 stars. And now it's time for nobody's favorite part of the show. This is Worst of the Week. This week's Worst of the Week is Adore. Have you never heard of this movie? Neither had I. But as we talk about a lot on this show, I listen to a number of bad movie podcasts, primarily How Did This Get Made? They said, we're going to watch this movie Adore. I'd never heard of it. I thought I should check it out. And you wouldn't be, I think, wrong for wanting to check this movie out. It was on the Netflix. And so I looked it up and I saw, oh, this movie is a movie that stars a couple of all-time great actresses. You've got Naomi Watts starring in this thing, and you've also got Robin Wright, who's been doing such great work on House of Cards. And then you start watching the movie. And now it's a movie, it's set in Australia, which makes sense for Naomi, because she's Australian. Doesn't make sense for Robin, because she ain't. Why wouldn't you put like a Toni Collette in it, regardless? You start watching this, it seems like a prestige drama about a couple of women who have been friends for their whole lives and whatever, and they get to middle age and they become frustrated with the trajectory of their lives. One of them, couldn't tell you which one, is married to the bad guy from Rogue One, and that marriage isn't going great, so you can see, okay, this is going to be one of those kind of movies. They also both have sons, and you're watching this movie, and there's a scene early in the movie where the ladies are on the beach, and they're watching their two teenaged sons, surfing and stuff, and they start talking about what Herculean Adonises these young boys, or not young boys, I think they're supposed to be 17 or 18, and they're being played by guys who are probably in their 20s. But, these guys are ripped. It's a little awkward, right? And the movie keeps going, and then you realize, oh, this is a movie about how Naomi Watts is going to start, let's say, dating. I think that's a good word we can use on this show. Naomi Watts starts dating Robin Wright's son, and Robin Wright starts dating Naomi Watts' son. And it is super creepy and gross and upsetting and odd. And that is pretty much what the movie is about how these two lifelong friends want to date each other's sons. Ew. Add to that a super bizarre climax where the moms have come to their senses enough to break things off. The boys have gotten a little bit older, and they've gotten married and started families of their own, but they just can't keep their hands off each other, and so they break up the families, and the movie ends with what really feels like it's supposed to be a happy ending, with the moms and the sons reunited in a romance. No. No, movie, no. The only thing that keeps this movie away from the half-a-star rating is that it is so bizarre that you can't look away from it. But it is still a truly bad movie. I didn't adore it, is what I'm telling you. 1 star. Let's forget all of that and check out the best of the bunch. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of you out there who watch this show. I hope a lot of you watch this show. There are a lot of you out there watching this show and saying to yourselves, why does Eric keep listening to these bad movie podcasts? Does he hate himself? What is his deal? Maybe he should seek out good movies. And that is why I'm happy to tell you that there is now a good movie podcast. It's called Unspooled, and they are watching every movie on the AFI Top 100. Your hosts are Amy Nicholson, film critic extraordinaire. She hosts her own podcast called The Canon. And then Paul Scheer, terrific comedic character actor and host of the aforementioned How Did This Get Made? They're teaming up to watch all the movies on the American Film Institute's Top 100 Movies. Now, I started listening to the show and I felt like I've seen these movies, right? I've seen 100 movies, and then an episode would come out and I was like, oh, I haven't seen that movie. Or, as happens more often, I haven't seen that movie in a really long time. So I am certainly using this podcast, as I'm sure a lot of people are, as I recommend you would, to reconnect with some of the, at least supposed cinema greats. Because some of these turn out to be great, and some of them turn out to be, I think, needing of a reevaluation. Today, though, we are talking, and spoilers, we're in the best of the bunch section of the show. I bet you I liked this one. Today, we're talking about The French Connection. Gene Hackman stars in one of the all-time great this isn't a crop drama. One of the all-time great cop dramas as Popeye Doyle, a real anti-hero, a cop who doesn't necessarily let the law or morality stand in the way, a guy who does some gross things throughout the movie in his pursuit of a French drug kingpin who has come to New York City. It's a terrific movie. It feels very real. It feels gritty and dirty. There's a lot of waiting around in this movie, of waiting for things to break. You know, the cops follow leads that don't always pan out, right? This is one of those movies that doesn't, it's not a big action cop movie where everything is going their way. This is a real procedural, we've got to solve this crime and it's going to take time movie. In its way, I mean, it feels very revolutionary for the time, and feels like a precursor to the sort of thing that we saw in The Wire, which was so good about showcasing police in a real way. Hackman's an absolute powerhouse in this. It's a truly great performance from a truly great actor, helped ably by an understated performance from Roy Scheider. This movie has amazing chases in it. There are a couple of amazing foot chases, and there is a chase where the bad guy is on the E-train, and Hackman is chasing it in his car. That is unbelievable. Even if you know people that you don't think would like this movie after you've seen it, they're going to like that chase. It is incredible. There's also a terrific sequence where they've seized the French drug guy's car, and they know that the drugs must be in the car, and they have to take it apart piece by piece to find them. That's a really great scene that I don't want to spoil the ending to. This is really a terrific movie. I had seen, I don't think the whole thing before. I had seen part of it and hadn't really connected with it. I don't know if I just wasn't in the right frame of mind or what, but watching it this time, I really, really loved it. The French Connection, 4.5 stars. That is going to do it for Every Movie Ever. Thank you so much for watching. Please join us next time as we keep trying to review every movie ever made. Good night.